question that often comes up is, what is neuroplasticity? There's a lot of discussion about what neuroplasticity is out in the public, especially within the media. Honestly, there's a lot of misconceptions about neuroplasticity, so this video is going to be talking about quite a few of those misconceptions, showing you some examples, and then finishing up with what my definition of neuroplasticity is, and basically like what a neuroscientist would think about as neuroplasticity. So when you type in the term neuroplasticity into a search engine, you get all kinds of goofy things. A lot of woo and pseudoscience, frankly, will show up. This is the cover of a bunch of different books that you can find on Amazon, specifically about neuroplasticity. Now, not all of these are garbage. In fact, there's some very good books in here. For instance, this book by Norman Doidge, The Brain's Way of Healing, is quite excellent. And in fact, for my neuroplasticity class, we're reading The Brain That Changes Itself, also by Norman Doidge. Norman Doidge is an excellent psychiatrist who's done work on neuroplasticity from a psychiatrist's perspective, and he's a very good writer, so I encourage you to read his books about neuroplasticity. This is another one that's good too, Rewire Your Brain. It's interesting, but a lot of it is about like brain training and sort of unlocking secret power in your brain. So we're going to look at a quote about neuroplasticity, and we'll kind of take a look at that one. So, the power of neuroplasticity. This neuroplasticity book contains proven steps and strategies on how to rewire your brain. It's pretty amazing how many people go throughout life without even understanding the true power of their brain. If they only knew that they had the power to change and rewire their brain for success, love, concentration, discipline, procrastination, and any other problem area or belief. The time is now. Begin at once to take control of your brain and decide to get in the driver's seat of your life. Armed with the information in neuroplasticity, you will begin to see the incredible power your mind has that is just waiting to be awakened. All right, so there's a lot of promises in this, and the actual field of neuroplasticity from a neuroscientist perspective is not going to be able to give you secrets that will allow you to unlock secrets for success, love, concentration, discipline. It might help with procrastination. It just doesn't work that way. And certainly not any other problem area or belief. So there's a lot of promises here that simply just isn't based in research. And in fact, a lot of this kind of makes me think about like the movie Lucy, the movie with Scarlett Johansson, where she only, somehow gets a hold of some sort of drug that allows her to unlock more than 10% of her brain. And it seems like a lot of this is sort of based in the myth that we only use 10% of our brain, and then we can unlock more of that special power by just unlocking the power of neuroplasticity. So here's another video we're going to look at, claiming that 2-ball ping pong is a great way to increase your neuroplasticity. I don't really think so. There probably are better things that you can do. In fact, that is going to be some of the things that we will talk about in this course. So yeah, why don't we watch this?
What you want to do in life is practice increasing your neuroplasticity. 2-ball ping pong is a good start. So the reason that I play 2-ball ping pong every once in a while, or I play speed chess, read a book a day, is because the two most correlated attributes with in terms of your income are, number one, it's hard, people are trying to throw, okay. Number one, guess what it is? Willpower. And number two, brain power. The good news is that people used to think that your IQ is static, but it's not static. So there's things like lifestyle, your environment growing up, there's sometimes 20 IQ point swings. And remember, IQ is exponential, so a 20-point swing is a lot more than a 20% increase. You gotta think about brain games. People like video games, those are great, but pick video games that stretch your brain. When you play poker, up the ante a little bit. Or if you don't play any games at all, start playing. And then of course, read. That increases your IQ. And it of course also increases your working knowledge. There's two types of IQ, static. That's kind of the one that peaks when you're 14 years old, like your brain gets about as smart as you can be in terms of certain things like memory and stuff like that, raw computational power when you're a teenager. As you get older, you lose a little bit of that, but you increase in, experiential IQ. So anyway, little fun thing. Now, multitasking though, you don't want to do it all the time because multitasking lowers performance. I play ping pong or chess a lot better when I got more time to think, but every once in a while, I call it blitzing. You want to blitz your brain and you feel it. Like James was like, dude, my heartbeat went up, my skin, you get hotter, and the reason is you're in fight or flight mode a little bit, and your brain's like multiple attackers, and so it forces a different part of your brain to become active. That's neuroplasticity. So make your brain as adaptable as possible, okay? Anyway, talk to you soon.
Okay, my opinion is you don't want to blitz your brain, whatever that is. I think playing poker's fine, but I think upping the ante isn't really going to unlock neuroplasticity. There's a lot of misconceptions in this video. Two-ball ping pong might actually, induce some changes. In fact, there are performance-related changes that can induce change in your brain, but it's going to be specifically related to motor output and really just in the motor cortex, as we're going to learn about. So, yeah, I wouldn't take this guy's advice. So some of you might recognize him. Others of you might not, which I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but we're going to watch a video of this guy. So his name is Tai Lopez, and yeah, he's kind of a clown. So when YouTube first started to release commercials, like his video was everywhere. It was like the most obnoxious thing that you had to sit there and watch. And this is it. So it's absurd. And you can see that like this guy is clearly one of these like sort of self-help gurus, but kind of a dork about the whole thing. So, and which is not surprising based on what we just saw. So we're going to watch this.
Here in my garage, just bought this new Lamborghini here. It's fun to drive up here in the Hollywood Hills. But you know what I like a lot more than materialistic things? Knowledge. In fact, I'm a lot more proud of these 7 new bookshelves that I had to get installed to hold 2,000 new books that I bought. It's like the billionaire Warren Buffett says, the more you learn, the more you earn. Now, maybe you've seen my TEDx talk where I talk about how I read a book a day. I read a book a day not to show off. It's, again, about the knowledge. In fact, the real reason I keep this Lamborghini here is that it's a reminder that dreams are still possible, because it wasn't that long ago that I was in a little town across the country sleeping on a couch in a mobile home with only $47 in my bank account. I didn't have a college degree. I had no opportunities. But you know what? Something happened that changed my life. I bumped into a mentor and another mentor and a few more mentors. I found 5 mentors, and they showed me what they did to become multimillionaires. Again, it's not just about money. It's about the good life, health, wealth, love, and happiness. And so I recorded a little video. It's actually on my website. You can click here on this video and it'll take you to my website where I share 3 things that they taught me. 3 things that you can implement today no matter where you are. Now, this isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. Like they say, if things sound too good to be true, they are too good to be true. I'm not promising you that tomorrow you're going to be able to go out and buy a Lamborghini. But what I am telling you is it can happen faster than you think if you know the proven steps. So I record a little 2-minute video on my website.
Okay, that's enough of that. Yeah, he's kind of ridiculous. Real character. And obviously selling secret knowledge in order to become wealthy, health, wealth, happiness, that kind of thing. All right, but that's Tai Lopez. There's another video that we can watch here. This is a remix of the one we just saw. This one's funnier, so we're going to watch this. If you find all this to be dumb, you can skip ahead, but I actually think this is really funny, so we're going to watch this.
Here in my garage, just bought this new Lamborghini here. It's fun to drive up here in the Hollywood Hills. But you know what I like a lot more than knowledge? This new Lamborghini here. But you know what I like a lot more than the new Lamborghini here? My TEDx talk where I talk about this
new Lamborghini here.
In fact, I'm a lot more proud of these 7 new Hollywood Hills that I had to get installed to hold 2,000 new Lamborghinis. It's like the Buffett Warren billionaire says, the more you earn, the more you drive up here in the Hollywood Hills. In fact, the real reason I keep this Lamborghini here is that it's a reminder that dreams are still possible, because it wasn't that long ago that I was in a little Lamborghini sleeping on bookshelves in the Hollywood Hills with only $47 billion in my bank account, and only 47 Lamborghinis in my Lamborghini account, and only 47 hills in my Hollywood account, and only 47 TEDx talks where I talk about Warren Buffett's in my TEDx talks where I talk about Warren Buffett account. But you know what? Something happened that changed my life. I bumped into a Lamborghini and another Lamborghini, and a few more Lamborghinis. I found 5 Lamborghinis. I don't call it money anymore. I call it fuel units. You must have enough fuel units. You must have enough Lamborghinis. You must
construct additional pylons.
I'll see you on my website. It's a quick video, and you'll see there absolutely
nothing.
Okay, so Tai Lopez, pretty absurd guy. Yeah, sort of ridiculous. So, right. He's kind of claiming that, like, you can unlock special powers. Obviously, that's kind of the idea. And there's a lot out there. When you start looking at neuroplasticity, the way it's discussed in the public, a lot of it is around this idea that, like, you can unlock special powers. And, you know, I'm sorry to say this, but just doing 2-ball ping pong and blitzing your brain by upping the ante in poker is not going to unlock special powers for you. Now, a basic definition of neuroplasticity is change in the brain, right? So we have a brain, and if we just take the word neuroplasticity, the word plasticity does mean change. If something is plastic, that means change, and neuro being the brain. But honestly, I think that definition is just far too encompassing. And in fact, you know, because we can talk about all kinds of changes that happen in the brain, but that's not going to be, you know, what we call neuroplasticity. So for instance, areas of your brain will change in neural activity. If you turn on the lights, your visual cortex will increase in activity. Is that neuroplasticity? No, that's just what the brain does. Like, the areas of the brain that get activated will increase the firing rate, and that's just what normal brain areas do. Now, of course, we can talk about how the brain changes over time. Obviously, the brain of an infant is different than the brain of a 5-year-old, which is different than the brain of a 16-year-old, which is different than the brain of someone who is 65 years old. So the brain certainly changes over time. And this is we will be talking about some of this during the course, mostly just as a baseline to compare what true neuroplasticity is. Because, it is just the normal course of events that the brain is going to change over time as it ages. What about changes in blood flow, right? That is something, of course, that occurs in the brain as it changes. It's a change in the brain, right? So blood flow will increase in brain areas where there's an increase in neural activity. It is one way that we can determine if areas of the brain are being activated in human brains. We can also do this in animal models too, but it's one of the most common and most interesting ways that we can evaluate changes in brain activity in human beings, because we can measure it using functional magnetic resonance imaging. But that's just changes in neural activity. If a brain area becomes very active, you're going to have an increase in blood flow, and that's how you measure changes in brain activity in human beings. What about changes in gene expression, right? Neurons, of course, express genes, right? They have DNA. They're expressing genes. There's mRNA, and then there's an increase in protein that comes from that. And that will change over the course of a day. It'll change if, say, a brain area is particularly active. Some of that is starting to get into mechanisms of neuroplasticity, but not every change in gene expression is going to be neuroplasticity, because there's just normal things that change, say, over the course of a day. What about changes in synaptic weighting? This is something that we will be talking about, but I don't think that every change in synaptic weighting is necessarily neuroplasticity. So we definitely talk about synaptic plasticity as being a core mechanism of memory formation, and that it is really important for memory, but that's also, again, something that I just think brains do, and that you're going to find changes of synapses, whether a synapse becomes stronger or weaker, or if a synapse is added or if it's lost. We will be talking about these things during this course, but it's not what I'm going to focus on because I think that neuroplasticity needs to be a little bit more limited and probably include broader things, okay? So let's talk a little bit about what that is. So neuroplasticity, as I said, is limited. It's not going to be just this change in the brain. That's too broad. So I certainly think that structural changes, such as anatomical changes that happen in the brain, neural changes, so that's like changes in neuron shape, as well as synaptic changes, especially if it's robust synaptic changes. These are the kinds of structural changes, like changes of the physical anatomy of individual neurons or parts of neurons or even whole structures of the brain. As it deviates from normal trajectories, those are things that I would consider to be neuroplasticity. And that's what we're going to focus in this course. Now, this can also, and obviously often does, include functional changes. So if there are major anatomical changes that are happening in the brain, this is definitely going to coincide with functional changes. So we will definitely be talking about new roles for brain areas. We will be talking about LTP and LTD. So this is long-term potentiation and long-term depression. Now, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this because this is the basic mechanism of synaptic plasticity that is just really about mechanisms of memory. But we are going to be, I'll have a whole video on LTP and LTD, so we will be talking about it. And then we'll also be talking about changes in gene expression that are driven by new triggers that induce anatomical, neural, and synaptic changes. So this whole video series is going to be quite detailed. It's going to be for advanced understanding, advanced users and people who know quite a bit about the way the brain works. So I'm going to assume that many of you have some kind of basic working knowledge about brains and brain structure. I'll try to cover as many of the basics as I can, but we're getting into kind of the details and the weeds on things. So if you do have questions about some of the details of like some of the basic fundamentals of the way brains are structured, I encourage you to check out my Introduction to Neuroscience seminar series, which is a different playlist. So where does neuroplasticity come from? What originates neuroplasticity? Now, changes within the body can certainly induce mechanisms of neuroplasticity. Changes outside of the body can induce neuroplasticity. And then in things like disease, aging, and injury can also induce change in the brain. Now, I'm not going to focus so much on aging because I consider that to be just part of the normal trajectories, but we definitely are going to be talking about disease states and injury and how that can induce major changes in brain structure and function. Neuroplasticity often recapitulates developmental mechanisms. So brains have to grow and get wired up, and it turns out neuroplasticity is often reusing those same mechanisms. And so that's like where my research becomes interesting, in that I look at the intersection of, say, developmental mechanisms and neuroplasticity. And we end up understanding these developmental mechanisms and how that then gets recapitulated in the adult brain. So mostly what we're going to be focusing on is the adult brain and how things change in adults. So we're not really going to be covering developmental change, but we have to understand some of the developmental change in order to know what's happening in the adult brain. So these are some of the kinds of concepts that we're going to be covering in this whole video series. So my definition of neuroplasticity is this: long-lasting, adaptive, structural, and or functional change in the brain that deviates from quote-unquote normal trajectories. The rest of this playlist is going to detail my views on neuroplasticity. You talk to other researchers on neuroplasticity, you might get some different ideas. I think I'm mostly covering the consensus. And in fact, much of what I talk about is actually quite similar and covered in the book, The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Deutsch. He covers it from a slightly different perspective, more from a human, sort of functional and clinical perspective. I will cover a lot of those things as well, but I tend to have more focus on what happens within brains across all kinds of animals, including humans, but we're going to be talking about a lot of rodent animal models as well as non-rodent models as well. So this is going to be an overview of the neuroscience of neuroplasticity, and we will not be including a bunch of woo and goofy stuff that often gets mentioned in the public discussions on this topic. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if if you're watching this, so you can see more of the videos. And I will. The next one is going to be on neurogenesis. So I'm going to be introducing neurogenesis. Hopefully you can see a link for that right here. And I will check you later. Bye-bye.